Folks, welcome to the Red Hook Town Board meeting of April 24th, 2019. Could I ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Steve, for the folks at home, once again, we'd like to, if you would hand over so they can see the agenda items we will be discussing this evening. Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to deviate slightly from the order, if that's okay, because we have some young folks who we want to get home in time to do their homework, right? You guys have homework?
Yes. I don't know about her.
You don't have any homework? Oh, you can stay all night then. Okay. Terrific. All right, so jumping around, we have a couple of public hearings. We'll get to them in just a few minutes. But we're going to go to item number 2, if that's okay. It's a DEC Camp Scholarship. And we have with us, as per usual, Jen Kavanaugh, who has been kind enough to organize these scholarships in the past and again this year. And Jen, would you please approach the microphone?
Chairs closer together tonight. Yes, like in past years, I think we're working on decades now, the Town of Red Hook, CAC, has administered or kind of helped along the process of charitable organizations, so VFW of Red Hook, and now they've been joined by the Hendrick Hudson Masons to sponsor 2 children from our school district to go to the DEC environmental camps. There's a few of them throughout the state, but they're all environmentally focused. So the CAC kind of helps get the kids to send in their applications. We pick the winners and those sort of things, but it's definitely all thanks to the VFW and the Masons for actually getting these kids to the camp scot-free, no charge, paid for, so which is, as a parent, very appreciated. So this year, we as in all years, in the past, I guess 5 anyway, we have 2 winners, one who is here, one who unfortunately could not make it, one sponsor, the VFW, and one that couldn't make it, the Masons. So we're 1 for 1 on both sides. And so our winner, the winner that could not attend, I will go that way first. Her name is Elizabeth Robertson. She is from Barrytown, and I just heard that she finally got off the wait list, so she's actually got into camp and will be going. And she's very excited to go there, and she's being, again, sponsored by the Masons. So thank you to the Masons for $350 sponsorship for her to go to camp. And our other winner is, I'm going to butcher her name, and I apologize in the beginning, Stella Marenthal Lejean. French, she's got it. Stella had a great application. She has a lot of interest and experience in the woods and building teepees and getting dirty and all the things we love about being a kid and being able to do those things. She has recently spent some time in the Middle East and had a refocused appreciation for the different environments of the world and the different things that affect natural resources, be it poverty, water shortage, things like that. She's well aware of the bounty that we have here and what we're so lucky to have, and then that which is not so available elsewhere. And she put a phrase in her application that I just love. She said, to answer a question that we had prompted, she had said, without knowing about the environment, you can't navigate the world. And I thought that was pretty poignant for a 13-year-old. So without further ado, I would like to invite Bill Moore, past commander of the VFW, to present Stella with her sponsorship.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This certificate here is from Jen and the Red Hook Conservative Advisory Council for your paperwork.
Thank you very much.
And then the Red Hook VFW, Post 7765, a certificate of achievement for your hard work and your dedication to this, and we appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Well,
And it's been 30 years or plus that the Red Hook VFW has done this, so we thank you for doing such a fine
yes,
job.
of course. Thank you for allowing me to have this experience. I'm very excited to go for the week. As you already said, I think, very good words. I love going out in nature and exploring and building teepees and getting dirty and playing sports and everything. And I'm very excited to go for this week and meet new people from all over New York. And I want to thank you again for giving us the money and letting me go without paying anything for free. And it's just a great opportunity.
Congratulations.
I think you should take my seat tonight. You did such a nice job. The added benefit is you get to do a selfie with the supervisor, which is
Oh my gosh,
invaluable.
I'm so
Do
excited.
this, take this.
Try putting that on eBay, see how much you got.
Hold this up.
Okay, there are your fans in the background. Okay, his mouth wide open.
Oh, no.
Nice job.
Very excited. So once again, congratulations to Stella. Good job, Stella.
And we started this how many years ago, Jen?
What was that?
We started this how many years ago in honor
I think
of
we're
Ruth
working on
Ojay, right?
31, 32, along past my steps, so.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Again, congratulations, thank you very
We're going to
much.
stick around for a minute, because I think that they ought to see what
What goes on in local
Yeah, what goes on in
government?
town.
Very good. So we will make a couple of announcements now. We want to let you know about some events coming up. In particular this weekend, for those of you in the audience, there's still time for you to know about these events. Some of which are a little bit too late for the folks at home, but we did mention it at the previous meeting. April 27th, this Saturday, we have 3 things going on. We have a senior expo at the Red Hook Community Center. I think that's from 10 to 2. We have the Arbor Day celebration right here at Town Hall. That, I believe, starts at 10 o'clock as well. You get free seedlings if you attend. We also have the combined Tivoli and Red Hook Fire Companies are having their barbecue later that afternoon. I believe that's from 5 to 8 over at the Red Hook Firehouse there. The barbecue is to help raise funds for their 100th anniversary celebration, which takes place in August of this year. So those are important events for this weekend. The following weekend begins our community build for the Red Hook Playground. As you know, we are building 2 distinct areas, a total rebuild of the playground area. That's May 3rd, 4th, 5th, and also the second weekend is May 10th and 11th. That's obviously at the Red Hook Rec Park, and we need volunteers in particular on which days? Do we know yet?
We need them on all the days.
On all the days still?
But if you have availability during the day on Fridays, those 2 Fridays are obviously difficult to find volunteers, but we will be building those days. And the second weekend, we especially will need volunteers. My hope and my faith is that once people see what happens the first weekend, the volunteers will come flooding in the second weekend. They're not signing up because they think we're gonna get it all done the first weekend, which we probably will, let's just be real. Jen and I just came from the rec park with Doug Strawinski and Kathy Treble, and there's so many people putting in energy toward the builds that I feel like it's gonna be really smooth and awesome, as long as the rain doesn't come. So, yeah, we need volunteers for all those days. And just to add on to that, we also should just notice that the rec park playground area will be closed starting on Monday, because we will be excavating all the material and the equipment out.
Preparing
starting
the
then.
equipment, yeah. And
so.
if we
were
didn't
not-
mention, it'd be a good time to mention how there might be free food involved for the volunteers being donated, so if we haven't enticed you otherwise. May 11th is also Apple Blossom Day here in the village of Red Hook. So we expect that there'll be lots of folks who will want to attend that event as always. So those are our announcements. Any other announcements for anyone? Okay.
You had the Memorial Day.
Wait, you have the
parade.
Memorial
Yep, Memorial Day Parade, obviously, we have time for that announcement, but that's happening on Saturday, on Monday, May 27th. The assembly begins at 9:15 at the high school. The parade will start at 10 a.m., rain or shine. Did Bill leave already? May have left. We just want to double check that the parade will start there. I know that they'll be preparing the high school for construction.
Yeah, there's a note about all that.
So, the parking is closed in the lower parking lot to construction trailers, so, just be advised of that for parking reasons. All right, would they recommend you park between the high school and Linden Avenue? All right, that's what we have for announcements. And we can move right into our first item, which is a proclamation for Arbor Day, something we do each year. We have one here. I'll be reading it this weekend with our dedicated tree commission that we have. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture, and just so you know, that's where it all started, in Nebraska of all places. The holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. It's observed now throughout the nation and world, and the trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas they are a renewable resource, they increase property values, they enhance the economic vitality of our areas and beautify our community. And whereas wherever they are planted, they are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Therefore, be it resolved, the town board of the town of Red Hook hereby proclaims April 27th as Arbor Day, as we have done so each year. And I so move. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Well, that was very easy. Okay, let's get on to some other items on the agenda, which is our 7:35 public hearing. It's a continuation of the public hearing on the proposed acquisition of former St. Sylvia's parcels. And if you were at our last meeting, you found out that we have been able to discuss with the Archdiocese, and they have agreed to negotiate with the town of Red Hook exclusively for this period on the potential acquisition of those properties. Since the last meeting, we did conduct a walkthrough where the church, as you can imagine, wanted to discuss with us which items would remain and which items would stay with the church and be moved to a different property. And so we conducted that walkthrough, and it went very well, and we continue to negotiate with the Archdiocese. We have nothing more to report than that. The other thing I would say is that at our last meeting, there were 1 or 2 people who had asked whether or not the town would consider some form of public-private partnership. And of course, it's our job to consider all options. So what I would suggest is if individuals or groups or entities do have some suggestions that they would like to make on a public-private partnership, or any other suggestion, frankly, for uses of those facilities, that we would of course welcome that. Tonight's public hearing is the second public hearing, but I'm going to make a recommendation that we continue for a month from now, our second meeting in May, so that we can take into account, any more thoughts and suggestions that folks may have, and certainly, continue with our negotiations with the Archdiocese. With that said, we have a public notice. Sue, if you could just read it before we open up the public hearing again.
Notice of continued public hearing regarding the proposed acquisition of former St. Sylvia's parcels. Please take notice that a continued public hearing will be held by the town board of the town of Red Hook on April 24th, 2019 at 7:35 p.m. local time at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, to hear all interested persons regarding the acquisition of real property for the following parcels for the public purposes of enhancement of recreational programs, expansion of community facilities, and preserving historic resources. Tax parcel 134-803-617-18-385-028, which is 104 through 108 Broadway in Tivoli. Tax parcel 134-803-617-18-383052, which is Broadway, Tivoli, and tax parcel 134-803-617-18-404-054, and that is 93 Broadway, Tivoli. Reputed owner, Church of St. Sylvia, which parcels have been offered for sale to the public pursuant to authorization of the Archdiocese of New York. At the continued public hearing, the town shall outline the purpose of the public project, its effect on the environment, including the economic, ecological, and social effect upon the community, and any other information, including maps and descriptions of the property to be acquired. All persons having an interest in the project are invited to attend the hearing and give oral and written statements and to submit other documents concerning the public purpose of the proposed acquisition. This hearing is held pursuant to the provisions of Section 201 and 202 of the Eminent Domain Procedure Law of New York. Property owners who may subsequently wish to challenge the condemnation of their property via judicial review may do so only on the basis of issues, facts, and objections raised at such hearing. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard in person or by directing comments in writing to the Town Board, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disability. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance at the above address or by phone 845-758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. Please take further notice that tax maps of the properties are available for review at the office of the town clerk, Red Hook, New York, 7340 South Broadway. By order of the town board of the town of Red Hook dated April 9th, 2019, Sue McCann, town clerk of the town of Red Hook. And as always, it was published in the Poughkeepsie Journal, it was on the web, it was posted at the town hall and sent to the two villages.
Thank you, Sue. And I put up on the screen again for the folks at home and the audience, there are 3 parcels, and I apologize, I think it's a little tricky to figure out which is the third one, but the church and the rectory home are on the southern portion there of Broadway. The parking lot is on the northern portion directly across, and then if you look 2 skinny parcels over to the right from the parking lot, I think that says 404054, that's the third parcel that is owned by the church. And so at this time, we will take any additional comments that folks want to make on the potential acquisition. Okay. Well, very good. So again, remind you that I'm going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing to give an opportunity for folks to make any suggestions that they have on the acquisition. Continue that public hearing until our second meeting in May, which is May, Sue, Wednesday?
The 22nd.
22nd, 7:35 p.m. Does that work?
I'll be here.
Okay. Yep. Very good. All right, so that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And again, we look forward to your ideas on the property and the use of the property. Okay. Very good. We have our Tivoli mayor and deputy mayor with us again tonight. Thank you all. And folks from Tivoli, many of you who were here at the last meeting supportive of the acquisition, and we appreciate you coming out and sharing your ideas with us.
Can I ask, since now that the public hearing part is wrapped up for now, have you all, at the Tivoli board, have you talked about this at your meetings? I've heard from people who are like confused about why the town is having meetings about it, but there's not any happening in Tivoli, and I just wondered if you've thought about that. Obviously, not a public hearing, but like, I don't know, an information session or some like thing on your website that explains why people should be coming here to give their input, or is there like a mechanism?
I don't know that we've been doing much else for a couple weeks in every encounter with everyone that we talk to. I mean, in Tivoli, sometimes we just do it on the street, as you know. We've certainly talked about it in our board workshop. Our last meeting was actually our reorg meeting, so it was a bit structured and didn't really have room for that. But I feel that most people are starting to understand what are the community preservation funds, how would this be paid for, why the town is the lead agency and that sort of thing. And again, it's a great opportunity for both governments to remind everyone that in Tivoli, they are both Tivoli residents and Town of Red Hook residents, and that you serve them and they can vote for you, or whether they do or not. But you are their officials just as much as we are, and so we really try to get them to come here.
Okay.
But
I was thinking we might do an FAQ and put it on our website so people
Great
understand, how the fund works and what the dollars can be used for. Yeah.
If you don't live in Tivoli, you should ride there on your way home or tomorrow. The Broadway is ablaze in white from the pear trees. It's quite a sight.
That's right. Okay, very good. Well, why don't we go right into our next public hearing, if we could. It was scheduled to start at 7:45. We're running a few minutes late, and that's on the proposed amendment to the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, and that's to include some of these parcels into the plan. Apparently, they were intended to be in, but weren't included in our last iteration back in 2016. So that is local law C. And Sue, if you would be kind enough to read the public notice for that as well.
Notice of continued public hearing on proposed amendment of the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, Local Law C proposed of 2019. Notice is hereby given that the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook, Dutchess County will meet at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, on the 24th day of April 2019 at 7:45 p.m. prevailing time for the purpose of conducting a continued public hearing upon a proposed local law C of 2019, including the 2019 amendment of the Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan. The Town of Red Hook Community Preservation Plan, in accordance with Section 64-H of the Town Law and Chapter 57 of the Red Hook Town Code, establishes a plan for the preservation of community character, to acquire interest or rights in real property for the preservation of community character within the town, including villages, in accordance with such plan, and in cooperation with willing sellers, and to provide a management and stewardship program for such interests and rights. The town board will meet to consider such amendment and hear all persons interested in the subject thereof and concerning the same. Please take further notice that copies of said local law C proposed of 2019, including the 2019 amendment to the Community Preservation Plan, are available for review at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard in person or by directing comments in writing to the Town Board, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disability. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance at the above address or by phone 845-758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook, dated April 9th, 2019, Sue McCann, Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook.
Thank you very much, Sue. And in addition to those three parcels that you saw on the previous slide, I'm putting up on the screen several parcels which, if you've been following for the last couple of years, we've been working with Winnicke Land Trust, who has applied to the state for monies to acquire these properties. It's roughly 336 acres. If you're familiar with the property, that is west of our Red Hook Rec Park West property and south of Aspinwall Road, you will see that there's a good chunk there, as well as all these properties that go over towards 9G. These are undeveloped lands of when the Annandale Development Corporation built out Linden Acres, this portion of Linden Acres. And so the lands are going to be acquired for conservation easement to be placed on the property, that restricts development and protects it water quality. And so we are working with Winnicke to develop trails, a segment of our trails, the village to village. And so one small parcel, which is, I don't know if you can see my little cursor there, there's a small tiny parcel that gets us to Aspinwall that is owned by one of these current property owners that was not included in the plan. It's a very tiny 50-foot strip, so that is also being included in proposed local law C, which is an amendment to the community preservation plan. So at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Is there some comments? Yes, Linda?
Linda Keeling. I'd like to request on behalf of persons with disabilities that the attachments that you say are available at Town Hall be made available on the website, especially for those that can't get to the Town Hall because maybe they don't have a ride that day. This would make it more transparent and open. I appreciate your doing that. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll look into what attachments we did not make available on the website. Okay, any other comments relating to this public hearing? Okay, if not, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing after we review some of the
Did you make the motion? Or you asked for a
information.
second?
Well, no, I think we should go through some of our materials that we have on this agenda item. So we'll leave open the public hearing until we get to that item on the agenda, which is number 5. And then we can close the public hearing. Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda, go to that, is a request from our water board.
Robert, it's until 8:45, never mind. Sorry.
No worries. We have a request from our water board to extend service to a homeowner on Wales Back Road. This is something we do from time to time at the recommendation of the water board. This is what's known as an out-of-district customer. If you own property adjoining our water district, it may be possible for us to service you or them to service you with water, depending upon the particular circumstances. And this is for the address 275 Wales Back. And we have a memo from Hank Van Paris, a water board chairman, saying there's no concern by the DEC regarding additional out-of-district connection. There's plenty of supply. And you have the agreement, it's our standard agreement. Did anybody have any questions about this?
There's no expense to the district, right? That's still true.
There's no expense to the district, that's right. If you are a landowner and you would like service to the district, that's something the town agrees to. Obviously, the cost of connecting is a cost that's incurred by the private landowner. And it's a benefit in some respects to the district as a whole. The more users, then the more pockets, if you will, to dip into when you have to make any improvements to that district or repairs to that district. So we have in front of us resolution number
39.
39, thank you, Sue. It's dated April 24th, 2019. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of an out-of-district water service agreement. And I think I've given you the details with that.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
member of the water district, I welcome you to the water district.
Welcome.
275 Wales Pond Road.
Will there be
Enjoy.
a welcome party? Okay, community choice aggregation is item number 4, and again, this is a reminder for the folks at home. The town of Red Hook, we are just in the nick of time to join 6 other municipalities. The town of Fishkill, the city of Beacon, the city of Kipsey, Marbletown, I think I'm gonna get one wrong, but we are joining together and using that buying power to secure the distribution source of your energy. And so what we are able to do, and we'll find out more with our with the RFP that has been actually just issued by the consortium and due back in the first week of May, is if you're familiar with your electric bills, Central Hudson distributes the energy, but somebody else actually supplies it. You've had the opportunity to choose who that somebody else is. And so what the town is doing is actually choosing a default provider for you. You'll be receiving a letter to that effect in your mail describing the program. You can just opt out if you wish not to join in. It's likely that you'll have a little bit of savings if you stay with the program. At least the RFP will tell us that. And it will be 100% renewable energy that will be supplied to you. So those are 2 very important public benefits. So at our previous meetings, we discussed and approved the agreements with the consortium, and that's Jewel Assets. And so we have an execution now of the electricity supply agreement that follows with that, and that is in your packet. That's this rather lengthy agreement that, thanks to our attorney to the town, really is a very fine document. So, were there any questions about it? Okay. Very good. If not, we have a resolution to approve the agreement, and we'll find out the results of the bid at our next meeting. It's very exciting. It's resolution number 38.
40.
40, sorry.
Going back in time.
Going backwards, sounds good. Dated April 24th, authorizing execution of a CCA, that's Community Choice Aggregation, electricity supply agreement, and I so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Okay, we are now at item number 5, which is the amendment to the Community Preservation Plan. So we have received correspondence from the CPF committee, who was kind enough to gather this week to review the parcels. They reviewed the memo from Ted Fink, our planner. They reviewed the open space plan, the comprehensive plan, scenic roads. They went over the point system that they have for this, looked at the historic values and all the parcels involved, and in sum, the committee unanimously recommends that the proposed changes to the CPP are adopted. We have some Seeker, we did part one at our last meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe, yes, we reviewed part
Part
one,
one.
right?
And then we had referrals. In this one, it was interesting, we had referrals to our planning board, but also to the Village of Tivoli's planning board, because St. Sylvia's obviously is in the village, so we needed a consistency determination from
Right, because there's an LWRP adopted
Separate one.
in Tivoli, which is separate from the LWRP that the town has for the rest of the town outside of that village.
That's right.
Right.
And if folks at home want to know why we work on all these documents, they come in handy. It was very handy when we were talking to Amtrak about the fence proposals and whether it was consistent with our local waterfront revitalization program. Okay, so seeker work here, we have the resolution from the Village of Tivoli determining that it was consistent. We have a resolution of our own that references that we previously classified this as a proposed type 1 action. We've reviewed a full environmental assessment form. And the Board of Trustees of the Village of Tivoli determined that it's consistent. And so we now have this draft notice of determination of non-significance and negative declaration. It's just an acquisition of properties at this time. And that's being discussed, but what the action is inclusion in the plan. And so the town board has reviewed the proposed law and its consistency with the LWRP and their findings, and we find it to be a non-significant action. And that would be resolution number 41 dated April 24th, and I so move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Close this public hearing.
We will about to, right now. So a motion to close the public hearing, now that we have reviewed and for the record have the correspondence from the Village of Tivoli. I make a motion we close the public hearing of local law C of 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Can I just ask, Rich, you're a member of the CP committee, right? Did you want to say anything? You were out while we were just discussing the memo, but.
No, I mean, all we were doing is, then you do the review, you know, once we did the initial reviews, we can do a review every year for that matter, of properties. So, and then it's just a matter of rating them, okay? And the idea of rating is not that we accept them, it's just if two properties come in online at the same time, the one that's rated higher doesn't mean it gets accepted.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Resolution 42, am I on the right number for a change?
We just did 41.
Yeah, resolution number 42. It's dated April 24th. It's a resolution approving local law C of 2019 regarding an amendment to the community preservation plan, and I so move. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Thank you, Rich, and your committee members, board members, I should say, for meeting. I'm going to jump around one more time because we have a visitor from how far away?
Oh, just Kingston.
Oh, just Kingston. Oh, well, had I known. No, we have correspondence. There was a request from the folks at Camp Rising Sun. They would like to do a 5K, 10K. 10K? I can do only a 1K, so for me it's all good.
Well, from Oriole Mills Road to Center Road, so I think it's about 10 miles or so.
Oh, it's a full 10 miles.
Correct.
Okay.
In phases though.
Okay. I'll be joining you for the Red Hook portion, which is what, about 2 blocks, I think, right?
Yeah.
So there's a tiny portion of that proposed road race that is within the town of Red Hook, and you've been corresponding with our highway superintendent. We've discussed all the options, closing the road, maybe just using cones, that kind of thing. And I think, what your request at this point is to just use cones. It's what, maybe the whole race is a couple of hours, but probably our portion wouldn't even be that much, right, in the town of Red Hook?
Correct. Should I stand at the mic or what?
Yes, please do. I'm sorry, yeah, absolutely. Come tell us what it's about and what you're doing it for.
Well, my name is Cameron Rylance, and I'm representing the Louis August Jonas Foundation, which operates the 2 Camp Rising Sun campuses. This year is the 30th anniversary of our girls' camp in Clinton. Although the boys' camp has been shuttered temporarily for the last couple summers, they're planning a charity fundraiser walk with our alumni from the Red Hook campus to the Clinton campus. The majority, we're probably only talking 50 to maybe 80, 100 people at the most. From our Red Hook campus on Oriole Mills Road, a walk down Oriole Mills Road to the fork in the road, where we will use our own camp vans to shuttle people who do not wish to continue from there to Bull's Head Road, our campus in Clinton. There's a walk and a bike ride. Probably most of the people who are involved will culminate their walk at the fork in the road, and some of the younger alumni will either bike or jog to our campus in Clinton. We expect this to be over in an hour or two. It is only 10 miles. Joggers and bicyclists will be done, it's a half hour at the most, I guess. And the walking portion where some of our older alumni plan to participate, that's, from Oriole Mills Road to the fork in the road, that's a mile or two. That's probably, half hour or so. So from the town of Red Hook, we're looking, because Oriole Mills Road is small and curvy, we're looking for the most participation there, just in terms of, setting some cones out that we can use for the weekend, until we get to, I guess that's 308, until we take a left, to the 308, 199 intersection, so.
What's the date?
July 20th, I believe, Saturday the 20th, that's the weekend. I believe we're looking for the cones or sawhorses from, Friday till, pick them up Monday when your, DPW is back at work, so. Pretty minor, involvement with personnel.
And Teresa, you've had a chance, so would you like to chime in?
Yes,
Yeah.
we will provide the cones, we'll set them in place on Friday,
Okay.
on our road only.
Yeah.
Anything beyond our road has to be within the jurisdiction that has authority over that section, so state, county, Rhinebeck. So on Oriole Mills Road, our DPW will put the cones out on Friday, and then after the race, the people from Camp Rising Sun will store them in an open building, and then we'll come pick them up on Monday. So they won't remain on the road for the entire week. We do not have any caution signs at this point in time, but sometimes people who plan these races get those little stick-in-the-ground signs saying, runners ahead, runners ahead. So our portion will be the cones along the road.
Great. Okay. And this seems to work for you,
Yeah, we wouldn't close the road, but it'll slow traffic down. It's not a heavily traveled road.
Right. Good. Well, we always enjoy having events in our town, generally speaking, and, it's a good cause, and we appreciate your approaching us and, discussing the options. So I'm fine with this, if you all are fine with this.
Good luck.
Great.
Great.
And the good news is it gives Bill enough time to train for it, right, Bill?
You're gonna be around.
Well, that's the night of the Red Hook Alumni Association, annual dinner dance.
There you go. We can do the short walk.
You see how quickly he came up with
There you go.
something to get out of the run?
All right, thank you all.
I have a question
Yes,
for you.
sure.
In the presentation right here, it says on the last page that you're looking for a letter of support for your state application, so is that still the case?
I believe so, yes. I was asked,
From us, from
I was
the
just
town.
asked to be a representative here tonight, while my Helene, who has been in charge of the correspondence, couldn't make it, but I imagine she will follow up. And yes, I believe because we're on a state road, I believe, for a very small portion in the town of Milan, we need a letter of support from another municipality, I believe that's involved.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 4 towns. I mean, from
I
Red
know.
Hook to Clinton, it's 4 towns. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
So,
we got your work cut out.
yeah, 1 down, 3 to go.
There you go.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. And when you have that letter, let us know and we'll.
Christine, you're right, they're looking for a letter of support from the town of Red Hook so
Correct.
that they can complete their state application. So every municipality that's involved has to submit a letter of support for the state application.
Great, so we probably have to pass a motion to.
So shall we do that tonight? A motion to authorize the supervisor to sign a letter of support for Camp Rising Sun's run that they're proposing on July 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you all very much. Okay. Jumping around, we were moving faster than I thought we would be moving tonight. Municipal Innovation Grant. So we need to continue to think about what we want to apply for this year. We've had a couple of thoughts proposed on the grant, which is due Friday, May 3rd, according to our materials. And so I'll just let you know, because we haven't decided, and maybe we will decide tonight, but I don't think we'll have all the materials necessary. We'll probably have to call a special meeting. May 3rd, it's due at 3 o'clock on Friday. So I know on Fridays we can have a quorum available, generally speaking. May 3rd, is that a possibility? We could set a special meeting for the purposes of reviewing the Municipal Innovation Grant application. Some of the ideas that have been bantered around is some money to renovate and rehab the St. Sylvia properties is one idea. Another idea that has been bantered about is to apply to the county for some money to do a feasibility study for a sewer extension from the village down to essentially Holy Cow area there. And other suggestions. One of the things we need to do pretty soon is we need to get some design work, although the county planners have said that they will help us with that, do a municipal campus plan. We need to start now planning the additional acre that we purchased next door and our future uses, highway, town hall, and so on and so forth, and how we might develop that property, for the future. So we'll get free assistance initially with that, but we may need some more work. Any other ideas?
Well, the money for the St. Sylvia's is a little prospective, right? You don't even own it yet.
We don't own it yet, and
So
who knows if
still
we'll
apply
have
for it?
that. Well, you can always apply for anything, but the question is, would it be relevant? Yeah, would it be relevant at the time? So I think we probably need to see where we are in those negotiations and securing those properties before we were to submit for that. That would be my thought anyway. Others? All right, well, let's keep our thinking caps on, please. Friday, May 3rd. Is there a time, Sarah, is there a time on
3
that day
p.m.
that you, what's that?
3 p.m. it says.
No, that's when it's due, Harry.
Yeah.
We can't meet at 3 p.m.
No,
because
no,
it has to be
I need it at
submitted.
least 2:30.
Is it too late?
Yeah, right.
Just so you,
No, it's not too late to meet that morning.
and if people are available, that's fine. I could do it on the 2nd also if we have problems with the quorum.
On the evening or the day?
The day, actually.
Oh,
I have
well, that would,
some meetings down this away, so.
does that work for you, Sarah, on the second? Really? Okay. You want to pick a time then, the two of you? Could you pick a time on the second?
You wanna just do it bright and early, like 9:30? Before everybody clears out?
9:30 a.m., May 2nd. Make a motion. Could we call a special meeting? Does that work? Christine?
Yep.
Okay. May 2nd, 9:30 a.m. to consider the 2019 Municipal Innovation Grant application. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. All right, we are moving right along. Why don't we discuss, since we're before our public hearing, which we scheduled for 8:45, why don't we take up some correspondence, if you will? We'll dispose with that. We had several letters, and I think we got a couple more in just a few hours ago, regarding the Empire State Trail project. For folks at home, the Empire State Trail is a 750-mile trail in New York State. It is proposed in the town of Red Hook to go up River Road, then to enter Bard College property, go through DEC lands with the trail, if you're familiar with the Tivoli Bays land, and then to come out at Kid Lane, right by Montgomery there, and go up Montgomery, and then turn a left right at the intersection of the village of Tivoli, and then go past those St. Sylvia properties, as a matter of fact, and then make a right at Woods Road, and I think go up to Claremont State Park. So there is a proposal, a draft proposal for public input. As we mentioned, I think at our last meeting, is now on the town website. It's been on there for, I think, a couple of weeks now. We look forward to your input on the traffic calming measures that are being proposed. Essentially what they are is some speed tables. They're a little bit different than speed humps. They're not as severe. The speed table has a rise in pavement of, say, 3 or 4 inches over the span of 20 some odd feet, maybe 6 or 8 feet on the very gradual ramp, and then a table, if you will, at the top of 10 or 12 feet, and then again a very gradual downslope in the road. It's apparently been proven to slow drivers down, and this is all in an effort to accommodate bikers on the Empire State Trail. So if you have not given your input, and folks in Barrytown and folks on River Road have given their input, we look forward to getting that from you. So please go to redhook.org. And once again, a plug for Notify Me. If you want to be notified about this initiative, state initiative, or any others, sign up for Notify Me. All right, so some letters we have talk about supporting the traffic calming measures. We did have a couple letters of folks who live on River Road who don't want the speed limit to be lowered, and don't want the speed tables. But we do have a bunch of folks from Barrytown weighing in, and they do like the suggestion. So again, we look forward to your input. And just so you know, the speed limit has been lowered from 40 to 35 as part of this effort. It will be lowered again to 30 according to the Department of Transportation, who is working with the county. It's a county road, so it's really all their decisions, but they certainly are looking for our input, both town residents and Village of Tivoli residents, so we would encourage you to chime in. Let's see, any other?
Richie has a comment.
All right, Richie, if we could, if you wouldn't mind, if we would wait to sort of public comment period. All right, that's what we have for correspondence. Why don't we jump over to some of our reports? We've got about 18 more minutes, and I know folks are here for the 8:45 public hearing. I apologize, I thought we needed to do it at that time, but it looks like we're
Through some committee reports?
cruising right along, yep. So why don't we do some board reports, if we would? That's item number 9. We have a ZBA monthly report, Bill, if you'd be kind enough to read. for the folks or summarize for the folks? Take my copy if you like.
The ZBA and the ZBA.
Yeah.
The board met on April 10, 2019. It's a regularly scheduled meeting. And there was one public hearing for an application for 3 area variances to construct 1 deck on a parcel in the, I think it's in the area of the golf course development east of the village. And at the end of the hearing, the board reviewed the site plan presented by the applicant with its setbacks and granted the variances that were sought by the applicant. All present voted to grant the requested variances, and that was done unanimously, and the meeting ended then. The next meeting is going to be May 8th.
Okay, thanks very much. We have a planning board report. Christine, if you'd be kind enough to summarize.
Okay, well, the planning board held 2 meetings in March as usual. They had a public hearing and granted conditional approval for a lot line alteration on Metzger Road. And they commenced or continued to review a minor subdivision and lot line alteration on Middle Road and an amended site plan and subdivision at the Traditions at Red Hook, formerly known as the Hoffman TND project, over by behind the Lyceum Theaters. And they also reviewed local law B 2019 extension of a moratorium on large-scale commercial extractive operations in the town of Red Hook.
Okay, and the proposed changes for that development include a swimming pool, what else? Christine?
I know it's the swimming pool. I think there's another change to one of the, where there was going to be
The types of housing.
sort of a public,
Right?
well, also another area, they're going to change some of the recreational facilities, I guess, and some of the dwelling types.
Relocation of dwelling types, yeah, and house styles and colors, right?
Yep.
Very good. We have a police department report.
The report for the period up to April 8th of 2019, approximately 1 month, by the police department for the village of Red Hook, recorded a total incidence for the reporting period at 94. There were 8 arrests made during that time, and 27 tickets were issued during that 1 month period.
Thanks very much, Bill. Christine, we have an assessor's office report.
Yeah, we actually have 2, one for February and one for March. Overall, the assessor's office is very busy entering exemption renewals and IVP information on the New York State Tax and Finance website. It's important to note that this will be the final year for the assessor's office to determine eligibility for the enhanced STAR exemption. And they're on a regular schedule of other renewals, which is every other calendar year. The tentative roll date is May 1st is approaching, and our assessor has entered 6 new homes, on the 2019 tax roll, and is working on an updated inventory for existing parcels in the towns and villages. So we had a number of home sales in January in both the town and villages. So there were 7 single-family sales, there was 1 vacant land with improvement, and then 3 others that had to do with agriculture. That was in the town. In the village of Red Hook, there was 1 single-family sale, and in the village of Tivoli, there was 1 condo sale. That was for January, sorry. So in February, there were 5 single-family home sales in the town of Red Hook, 1 single-family with an apartment in the village of Red Hook, 1 condo sale, and 2 single-family home sales in the village of Tivoli. So, and then in the April report, They are almost ready with the tentative roll for May 1st. And for sales in March and April in the town of Red Hook was 1 cold storage facility, 1 agricultural parcel, and 9 single-family homes. In the village of Red Hook were 4 single-family homes, and in the village of Tivoli, 1 single-family home. So they've been busy.
Very good, Chris. And just since we're on the topic of housing, I saw in the some communications that the Red Hook Common, that they'll be building out the remaining phase, I believe, right? Did you all see that? That there's a grant, Chris, is that something you're aware of on the county level? There was a grant for $250,000 towards the next stage of housing of Red Hook Commons. So just to let the folks know, and when we get more details of when that's expected to happen, we'll try to keep you posted. It came as a surprise to me. I wasn't aware that that was happening. Harry, we have a report for purchasing.
Purchasing. Do I have it?
Yeah.
Now I have it.
Now you have it? Okay.
Okay. There were 60 purchase orders during the last period totaling $78,000. The largest was $27,000 for road salt. I'm not sure we used a lot of road salt this winter. It was a little bit on the light side.
That's okay, Harry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We'll save it till next year. We're looking for a quote for the ceiling and striping with the parking lot here. And the next item on here is the playground, which we had talked about before, which is going to be a happy event in the next few weeks. Installing the playground.
Very good.
That's the 200,000.
Well, it's a wonderful community event.
You want to mention the amount of $200,000?
For what, the playground?
Playground equipment.
Yeah, the equipment that we,
Well, the whole thing is $250,000. Yeah. We did have some nice.
Almost $50,000 worth was raised by the community, and there's a lot of in-kind support happening by the community, and the town is also kicking about $200,000, yes. And the equipment will be delivered on May 2nd, right, Jen? And the stone dust is already there, and it's a lot of stuff to happen.
We hope you'll be very happy with it. It's going to look very different. It was looking pretty tired out there the other day when we were meeting, a lot of the equipment. Okay. Harry, how about the Water District report, please?
Water District virtually runs itself. It's really a great system that we have. All the measurements, and there's monthly measurements of the quality of the water, set for several different measurements. They're all better than required, which is great. We have a few maintenance problems that are being handled. I won't bore you with the flushing of fire hydrants. If you live in the area of the water system, the fire hydrants will be flushed on May 14th and 15th. So you may see your road being washed for that process.
Well, and increased turbidity in your water if you're in the water district.
That's right. It might give you some canned water, briefly.
Right. And I see that we're working with VRI to verify everyone's contact information. That later this month that we'll be going over everybody's accounts. If you're a recent purchaser of property within the Water District, please feel free to reach out to us and give us your up-to-date contact. Okay. We're getting there. Bill, you want to talk about your intermunicipal task force meeting?
well, our weekly meetings in March and April of this year, the intermunicipal task force, met with Michelle Gregg of Green Plan and our planner for the town of Red Hook. And we reviewed the proposed draft of what we call an annual operating permit for short-term rentals. It's a proposed document. And continued the discussion of what regulations, if any, should be enacted in the town of Red Hook with respect to short-term rentals. and that discussion continues.
Great. Rec Commission report, Harry?
You all have an hour or so?
Yeah. John's list goes to T.
There was been a lot of work done on the rec park in preliminary to the opening in the summer. There was, we lost power to the snack bar, which required putting in another 300-foot length of underground cable, so that we could have hamburgers for the summer. The snack bar was completely overhauled over the winter, and it looks great. It looks like what the Howard Johnsons were when I was a kid.
Wow.
And all of the fields and whatever have been updated, and they've actually been under use when the weather permits, which is a big problem this spring. There's been a number of baseball games and whatever, but the park is in great shape now.
Yeah, and,
Go ahead.
so, no, go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just to let the folks know that our new tennis courts are getting used this summer by the US Tennis Association. The adult league play in May and June. Mondays women's, Tuesday 2.5, whatever that means. But Tuesdays women's 3.0, Sundays men's 3.0, and that's from May 5th through June 30th. Again, I want to remind you that this year you're going to see a lot of disruption in our rec park, and we ask for your forgiveness in advance because the expression is no pain, no gain. We'll be redoing the middle field, we'll be redoing the lights, we'll be redoing the pathways, all of the areas surrounding that snack bar to make it ADA accessible. We will be redoing the fencing. We will be making that also ADA accessible. Pickleball courts will be created. I understand we may attempt to do some upgrades as well to the skateboard park area, so there's going to be a lot of disruption, and hopefully you'll find that it's all worth it at the end later this year, but we want to let you know that. The other thing I wanted to mention about recreation, since we have our Tivoli mayor and deputy mayor here, is that I'm going to propose maybe at the next meeting that we take a small portion of that excess sales tax that we received and try to address a couple of the issues that are facing at the Tivoli athletic field as well. Some of their fencing is in dire need, and some of the structures of some assistance, and because of course all of the recreation fields in our community are open to the public, and you know, as Joel said so eloquently, Tivoli residents are Red Hook residents, so I'd like your consideration at a future date, maybe appropriating some of those funds to make some of those repairs. So.
I just want to chime in
Yeah.
toward the end of that. So we've been talking a lot about the playground build tonight because it's coming up starting next weekend. And the volunteer group and John and Doug have been working so tirelessly to make sure it all comes together. There's a lot of moving parts, everything from starting the excavation this week and then moving through the build. And that includes, like you said, the food for volunteers and everything. There's a lot of people either donating money or more like in-kind services, you know, between like a bunch of the pizza places are bringing pizzas for the volunteers. Things that they don't have to do, they're not doing it for the glory of it, just because it's a community build. And so I want to recognize that, but I also wanted to mention, as we've been talking about how to do everything, I wanted to bring it to the board that the volunteer group would like to do some kind of like temporary recognition of all the different like pieces of donation that have come in, maybe like a sign or a banner or something that would be kept up just temporarily, just so that people as they start to enjoy the park can recognize that it's not just like I don't know, some magical thing that happened, but that we all kind of contributed to it in some way. So I wanted to bring that to the board because I understand it's something that, you know, we don't do very often. And we want to be careful that we don't recognize people in a way that makes the community feel that somehow one person's being pointed out and somebody else isn't or something. But I just thought maybe there's some way that we can come up with something we would feel comfortable with to, you know, support this effort that everybody's doing to bring all these different groups together. So I don't know what you all think and what temporary means to people and like what you might feel comfortable with as some kind of recognition. I think they were thinking somewhere like kind of near that sign with all the rules on it where you kind of come in and see the playground. And I have spoken a little bit with Chris Shaw to see if that's even something that's like allowed. There's certain guidelines that are out there that we could look at. Things like, you know, no logos. It can't be like misconstrued as advertising. This isn't like at Father Parafield where you have the cool, you know, signs if you're sponsoring something. It's not a sponsorship, but it's simply a recognition of all the different pieces that have come together. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, and I think that the way you just said is a good way to do it. Like we could have just a sentence or two that says, you know, a project like this doesn't happen without contributions from the whole community, and that we'd like to recognize, you know, those individuals or businesses who have contributed. And then maybe we'll just have a list of in alphabetical order or something.
Okay, yeah, I think they were, I mean, there's financial donations and then there's in kind. I don't know, we could talk about the pros and cons or the volunteer group, like whether it makes sense to do everything all mixed in together. I think at first the thought was to have like the donors on one side, sort of with the way you might do where you kind of have the people who gave the most money at the top and then going down. On the other hand, maybe it would be nice just to jumble everybody together, so it's sort of like, I don't know. I think you all had kind of thought of, you had more of a tiered system when people were giving, kind of the way you do with like a, what are those online giving campaigns?
Kickstarter
Like a
or something?
Kickstarter, you know, where you kind of have different tiers.
Right. Well, I'd be interested to hear what the committee comes up with as a recommendation, but in general,
Could they maybe do
I
that,
don't
like you
have
guys
a-
could send us like a document, like a mock-up, and then we could look at it together?
And as far as temporary goes, I mean, I think it would probably be nice to have it up during this like first summer season when it might get its most use, so maybe, I don't know, June, July, and August or something, we could keep it up.
I know John and Doug are comfortable with whatever we would deem appropriate. I mean, I'm sure we need to like clear with them officially where it's gonna go and what size and everything, but they've been in part of all the discussions as they sort of batted around the idea, so I know provisionally they're okay with the idea of it.
So as long as that, you know, we meet whatever requirements we have to.
Did I get that
To
right,
erect a
Chris Shaw? Is there
temporary
anything
sign?
else that yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one other thing, unless there's been an update that we haven't gotten yet, this is probably a great time to mention that we're still looking for a summer rec director.
Oh, funny you should mention that.
Did we have an
Two
update?
people submitted resumes for this.
Okay, great. Because, you know, we're getting close, so it's really important. It's a key position we have to get filled, so.
Yes. Very good. And I should tell you that I met with the school, and they are open to using one of their facilities, not the high school, because that's going to be under construction, for, you know, bad weather days. I know that typically what happens is parents are just on the ready if it happens to be too hot or too rainy. We just cancel and then everybody scrambles to figure out what to do with their children. And of course, that's not what we want. We want to be able to provide you with a service that really meets your needs. And so we'll be looking at Mill Road or the Linden Avenue School as a place to put them. So
that's great.
Good. And even looking, you know, maybe not this year, but next year at expanded hours, something like that. I know that's also on the wish list. So I hope that we can, you know, make that happen for those of you. All right, Sarah, while you're up, would you like to just say briefly a little bit about the Tree Preservation Commission?
Sure, so as always, the Tree Preservation Commission is on top of it. As we already discussed, they're having their annual Arbor Day celebration this weekend in the parking lot. It's going to be very exciting. So there are the free saplings as supplies last, right? First come, first serve. Starts at 9, proclamation at 10. There's going to be tree planting starting about 10:30 over on Pitcher Lane. Committee member Cody Hay will demonstrate proper pruning technique and tree climbing gear. Somewhere over here, is that right? Do we even have any trees that you can, I don't want to know, but over here.
Cody's been here in previous years demonstrating
It's
that.
gonna
He
be
looks
exciting.
He looks like he could build a house with everything that he's got hanging from him. you know.
And there will be a raffle basket, so definitely come till noon, is that right? There's
2 o'clock.
Oh, till 2? Oh, okay, okay, so.
It's also have,
Ten
pardon?
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
10.
also have literature available.
There's gonna be literature, all kinds of things, yeah, so 10 to 2 here at the parking lot, and then also, we've once again been recognized as a Tree City. Thanks so much for doing the work to keep us like certified. It's our 13th year, so that's exciting.
Great. There is a fairly lengthy report from the Senior Services Committee. I'll try to briefly let you know what they're up to. Again, it's about the Senior Expo. They have everyone coming from the County Office of the Aging to Association for the Blind and Vision Impaired to Hudson Valley Wood Carvers, Red Hook Public Library, the Red Hook Seniors Club, ARC, Mediation Center Coalition on Elder Abuse. And so these are just the many organizations that will be there, but they're also having a bunch of fitness demonstrations, yin yoga, I don't know what that is, Tai Chi, I do, Qigong, Feldenkrais, and karate. Healthy food demonstrations, classroom presentations about from Ulster Savings Bank on identity theft protection, budgeting. So they've got a dietitian, nutritionist. So they've got a lot of different things going on. The sewing room, Carolinas will introduce attendees to that.
Oral history interviews are.
Oral history interviews are happening. Tech help from Red Hook High students. Charlie Rubin will welcome prospective players to the ping pong room. Get ready, Charlie, one thing I'm good at. Okay, so that's the Senior Services Committee. All right, we are at that point in time, actually a couple minutes after now, for our 8:45 public hearing on proposed local law D of 2019. That's a local law to amend section 143, 146 of the zoning law regarding projects receiving site plan and special permit approval prior to May 30th, 2018. And so, Sue, would you be kind enough to read the public notice, please?
Notice of public hearing, Town of Red Hook. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook on April 24th, 2019 at 8:45 p.m. local time at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, to hear all interested persons on a proposed local law number D proposed of 2019 entitled "A Local Law to Amend Section 143-146 of the zoning law regarding projects receiving site plan and special permit approval prior to May 30th, 2018. This local law modifies Chapter 143 of the Town of Red Hook Code to permit applications for uses that have received conditional site plan and special permit approval prior to the adoption of Local Law 3 of 2018 to be processed under the previous iteration of the zoning law, including the issuance of building permits. Please take further notice that copies of said proposed local law are available for review at the Town Hall, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard in person or by directing comments in writing to the Town Board, 7340 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York. All reasonable accommodations will be made for persons with disabilities. In such a case, please notify the town clerk in advance at the above address or by phone 758-4606 so that arrangements can be made. By order of the Town Board of the Town of Red Hook, dated April 9th, 2019, Sue McCann, Town Clerk, Town of Red Hook. This was published in the Poughkeepsie Journal, posted at the Town Hall. It appeared on the web, and it was sent to surrounding municipalities.
Great, thank you very much, Sue. And just for the folks at home or in the audience, just a little bit of background. We received a letter from the town's planning board back on March 27th, 2019. It's in regard to local law 3 of 2018. It was a somewhat substantial change in our zoning regarding formula businesses, hamlet business, food trucks. It had several topics as part of that zoning change, and recently the planning board wrote to us that they are recommending that we consider amending local law 3 of 2018 to exempt any projects that received conditional final approval from the planning board prior to the date the law was adopted. I guess they believe that it's important that we grandfather those projects that had already received approvals. They've provided us with a list of, I believe it's 16 projects that had received approvals at the time of adoption, and so they have made that recommendation to us. So at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing for comments. Would somebody like to make comments? Linda?
Linda Keelan. I have 4 points. 1, what is the real reason for local law D when A and C were passed previously? This would seem to be a waste of taxpayer monies. Your counsel, Christine Schall, seems to be giving the town board unsound advice. 2, it's perceived that local law D seems to be an unnecessary proposal favoring a single former project. This proposal is unnecessary and was promulgated to favor the perceived approvals for site plan and special permit for a targeted, formally proposed project, potentially known as the Schaefer Motel. 3, local law D was not reviewed by the planning board until a faulty notice for Tuesday, April 22, which should have been noticed as Tuesday, April 23, which was also after the town's public notice went out on April 10th. This is another example of a lack of transparency by the town board members, just like the emergency special meeting the town board held on March 22, which contained no agenda for the public prior to its March 27th meeting introducing local law D of 2019. This lack of transparency is collusive of the town board and planning board with the goal of keeping the public ill-informed of its business transactions and attempting to deny public information and input. 3, public meetings held on the same night for Tuesday, April 23rd. The planning board's meeting to review and decide upon local law D was held at the same time as 2 other meetings for the tree commission and local waterfront, which was not an approved meeting date. Again, these multiple meetings prevented the public from participating in the town's business, especially as I was required to attend the tree commission meeting, whose change in date was approved for several weeks and acknowledged by the secretary to the supervisor, Jackie Fenaroli, on the morning of April 23rd. In conclusion, local law D should not be voted on tonight as it was procedurally defective. It didn't allow the public to attend the town board meeting on Friday morning, March 23rd, and the evening planning board meeting on Tuesday, April 23rd. 2, there seems to be a rush to pass this amendment without due consideration of the public's ability to attend and understand the discussion surrounding the amendment. 3, this law also seems to be targeting a specific project, which is wrong. The town should not be adding or changing zoning laws to benefit a specific applicant while intentionally denying the rights of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Would anybody else like to make some comments, Norman?
Good evening. I think the town board should consider this and approve it. It seems logical and just. The approval process for projects in Red Hook is lengthy. I realize that the zoning code in Red Hook is constantly evolving. If a project meets the zoning code at some point, it should definitely not have to evolve as fast as the zoning code evolves. So I think it's logical and just, should be approved.
Thank you, Norman. Anyone else? Huh?
Good evening. I'm going to address, I have a letter, I'm going to address the Schaefer project, which would fall under this law. And the first thing is, what is it about the Schaefer project? Why has so much time, effort, money been expended to try to make 10 pounds fit in a 5-pound bag? Why is the town so driven to make it a reality that it has rewritten and weakened our zoning law to custom fit the project? These actions have taken place without regard for neighbors' list of concerns, particularly the ones related to septic and water and the aquifer. Local Law D appears to be just another chapter in that saga. Zoning laws are created to control development and to prevent conflict. Well, before recent alterations, the town of Red Hook had a zoning law that offered residents protection from overdevelopment in B1 district. For properties split by zoning districts, commercial expansion into the adjacent RD district is possible up to 25 feet. This offered flexibility to developers, yet prevented overdevelopment and maintained our rural character. The usable land available on the Schaefer property limits the expansion options with the original zoning law due to the limited amount of B1 acreage. Renovation with the old zoning law, renovation with perhaps a modest expansion might have been possible. The project could have been completed in full operation probably 2 years ago. There would have been peace and harmony with the residents of Upper Red Hook, and probably attorneys wouldn't have even been needed on anyone's behalf. Could have just gone right through zoning. However, that was not the course the applicant or town leadership elected to take. Both desired an aggressive plan. The plans called for a commercial septic in the RD section beyond the allowed 25 feet extension. A ruling from the zoning officer was requested. The application of the law would seem to be fairly straightforward on that, but Mr. Fennell's ruling declared the septic system an accessory structure to lodging and therefore allowable in the RD3 section. An appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals was denied with some slick maneuvering of filing dates and affidavits. The denial sparked legal action, and it looks like the town felt compelled to craft Local Law A, which then rolled into Local Law C, giving Mr. Fennell's septic system as an accessory structure argument some legal support. When crafting this law, did anyone on the board ever think how ridiculous it is to declare a septic system as an accessory structure? It doesn't fit the definition. You know it, and we know it. But after writing the law, you passed it, and then you spent thousands of taxpayer dollars on legal fees to defend it. Wow. Local Law D is proposed to specifically allow the applicant to be considered under a law applicable before May 30th, 2018. All of the above is a lot of town government interference with zoning. So what are the results? Number one, the applicant has been encouraged to submit plans that clearly are too much development for the lot. Number two, the once peaceful hamlet of Upper Red Hook is at war. All parties, including the town, are consumed in a expensive legal quagmire. The protection offered by our zoning law has been compromised, and it's just been a big waste of government, human energy, and a cause of anxiety from everyone's perspective. Our question, why? Who stands to win? Not the Schaefers. They could have been operating 2 to 3 years ago if they had a compliant plan with the old zoning law. Not the planning board or the ZBA or town employees or town board. They've seen everyone's faces going in there asking for soils, and what a cotton picking waste of time. Not the violated zoning law where the septic system is still an accessory structure. Certainly not the taxpayers of Red Hook. And finally, not the neighbors. After several years and considerable financial resources, our concerns continued to be ignored. Ultimately, we needed to leave town to be heard objectively. Favorable ruling by New York State Supreme Court validated many of those concerns. Our zoning law was created to control development and prevent conflict. All we needed to do is let it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Would anybody else like to make some comments before we close the public hearing? No? Dominic?
I would just ask for clarification. When you read the law, you said there were 13, 14, whatever it was, that were conditional site plan pending approval. Local law C addressed food trucks. It addressed formula business, and the only part of local law C that had to do with zoning was the difference between the B1 and the HB district. So my question is, how many of the site plans that we're considering under this law are actually affected by the change of the law? Since the entire zoning law, local law C rather, was only in the HB district. So how many of those? No, it's a question.
I don't have the answer for you because I don't have that information for you.
Could it be 0?
Again, I don't have the answer for you, Doug.
I have another question.
Well, wait a minute, I mean, his question has to do, how many pre-existing applications would be impacted by this? Is about 16 or so.
Well, could potentially be, I think that's what the letter from the planning board says,
Yeah,
could potentially.
They list all those that were already given prior approval, and they meant to include them as grandfathered in the new law.
Or they
So that's what we're
desire us
doing.
to consider.
Okay.
So there'd be 16, including Norm Gregg.
Okay. So the next question is, what's the difference between local law A and local law C that's weighed unfairly that we have to make the zoning change?
I don't understand that question.
I think I'll try to address that question if I understand the question. More comments at the public hearing?
Good evening.
Hi.
Genevieve Trigg of Whiteman, Osham and Hannah. I'm going to skip the formalities because I think most of you remember who I am at this point. It's hard to believe that just 13 months ago, I stood here opposing Local Law A of 2018 on behalf of my clients. And now here we are again. But this time you've really outdone yourselves. It was one thing when you passed Local Law A of 2018, which was an obvious attempt to moot my client's first Article 78 proceeding. Even after everything that's happened to date, I'm surprised that you're willing to go so far to end run a judge's court order, all for the benefit of one applicant, the Schaefers. This town has taken extraordinary measures for the benefit of the Schaefers. We're all familiar with the saga that's unfolded over the past several years, and that every municipal body of this town has had their hands in it. However, we now have a Supreme Court order of the Dutchess County Supreme Court that explicitly orders the town to comply with the Hamlet Business Design and Review Standards, which were adopted under Local Law C of 2018, to the Schaefers project. A judge has ordered this of the town. The judge also ruled that the planning board ignored several legitimate environmental concerns raised by my clients when it purported to approve the Schaefers project, including violations of seeker and the town's own zoning code. To be clear, all the court order requires is that the town apply the same standards to every landowner in this town, specifically those in the HB zoning district. What would be so wrong with that? If the project complies with zoning, then why not go through the lawful process? Instead, this board continues to take extreme and calculated measures to ram through another local law to allow the Schaefers to avoid compliance with the HB zoning districts, all for the benefit of just that one applicant. We contest that this applies to multiple projects. It applies to one. The only one that the town is granting such exclusion is the Schaefers. The bias is undeniable. What's further undeniable is the harm to the taxpayers. I can't imagine how much this town has spent in legal fees defending the Schaefer project and all the legislative action that you've taken over the past 18 months. Surely you're aware that the only possible outcome of adopting this local law is future litigation. This is especially true the way that this local law has been rammed through without any consideration of the basic legislative procedure. First, you had a closed-door attorney-client meeting at the conclusion of your last meeting just a couple weeks ago. The very next day, there was a public hearing notice proposed for this local law D that was circulated without any discussion of local law D in the public forum at that meeting. However, even that public hearing notice is deficient on its face with requirements under the town law. You've also failed to obtain proper planning board referrals, despite that the planning board called a special meeting last night with just 3 days' notice, the day before this public hearing was scheduled. And per the usual, the town board has failed to comply with seeker, because it would be impossible to comply with seeker in just 10 days. Moreover, this action is directly related to the Schaefer project, so the board can't act on seeker for this local law until it acts on seeker for the Schaefer project as the court order mandated. Regardless of your decision tonight, we will continue to vigorously oppose this local law and the outrageous measures this board has unfortunately taken. I'm sure this will fall on deaf ears, but my clients encourage each of you individually to consider acting in the best interest of all the town, not just the Schaefers.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else like to make some comments? Warren?
I wasn't going to speak, but now I will. Warren Raplansky, I represent the Schaefers. Sometimes town boards, when they pass local laws, realize that there are unintended consequences of those laws. I do a fair amount of municipal work. I represent several municipalities, and very often we have to take a look at laws that we've passed and amend those laws to remedy a unintended negative consequence of the law. In this case, I don't know how it affects the other 15 property owners who have received permit approvals from the planning board, but I can tell you in good faith, under the prior local law, my client spent 3 years before the planning board and untold amounts of money in pursuing their application before the planning board, which was made substantially more difficult because of the opposition of 2 neighbors. In spite of that fact, every hoop that was requested of my client to jump through, every study that was requested of my client to be made was made, and my clients finally received approval for their project. A few days afterwards, this local law was passed, and I cannot believe that the town board had intended to require my clients now to go before the planning board again for another 3-year project under the new local law after they've received approval that was so hard fought and was so vigorously pursued in good faith. I ask you to do the right thing, correct the unintended consequence and error that was made when you passed this local law. That certainly affects my client, and it may affect other clients, not other clients, other residents of the town, and simply amend the law to exempt property owners who have received full approval from the planning board prior to the adoption of this local law. I thank you for having the courage to do this, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Further comments at the public hearing? Richie?
Can I speak now? Nothing to do with this.
No, this is a public hearing on this topic. On this topic. Sorry. Yeah, Nick?
I'd like to speak, but if you go up to the microphone.
I think so we can hear you, if that be okay, or at least get closer to it. Would that be all right?
I'm not so sure you want to hear this. Listening to Hoppy's comments, I really had no intention of coming here tonight. And then I thought, all right, I'm going to come as a spectator, and probably for once I'll just keep my mouth shut. But then when I heard what Hoppy's diatribe and then listening to some of your responses, I felt I had to speak up. What I'm seeing here is a pattern. I mean, I'm working from the inside, just as you people are. And we have a similar case that's taking place right now. Well, we had a party in town who was in violation of the code, and they were brought before the ZBA, and they made their appeal to retain what they'd already built illegally, and the board voted to deny their appeal. That party had since gone to you, Mr. McKeon, for another appeal. You've even told us that. Then a short time later, a proposition came to the ITF where apparently a lot of this changes in the ordinance are discussed and taking place. And this was presented to the ITF, and they denied it. They denied that they want to retain the law as it is. This is regarding fencing, and then talking specifically about the Cartier appeal. All right, I had asked zoning enforcement what the status of this is, because it's been 2.5 years now since this appeal was denied, and nothing has changed. And so sometime last year, early last year, he wrote a letter and stating that they have to get into compliance by a certain date. That date is long past, and I ask again of zoning enforcement, what is the status of this? I got an email this morning, and you can interpret this however you would like. But it says, Nick, I spoke with the town supervisor, which I presume is you, about this morning, and he advised me that he anticipates a revision to the fence section in the town zoning law at the time of the next revision of the law, and that the Cartier fence will then be permitted. This looks to me like you can circumvent the ZBA and get whatever changes you want. I mean, it appears you're running this town alone.
Thank you, Nick. Just for clarification, I think I mentioned to Bob Fennell, who's our CEO, they had a recommendation about a year ago and change, as you know, for the town board to consider whether or not to allow on corner lots that...
And this recommendation came from whom?
That came from the building and zoning department. And so they would like us to consider that, and I've explained to them that in general, we don't like to make a very tiny, excuse me, let me finish, Nick, just so, because you asked the question, that we don't like to make such a tiny change to our zoning law. There are a lot of costs associated with it that we like to put, as you've seen in the last few years, we like to put a few things together for consideration. And so that'll be brought before the board when they have other items to consider. Whether that change gets done or not is really up to the board. It's not up to any one individual. So that's a recommendation that came out of the department, much like this is a recommendation that came from the planning board.
This recommendation was presented to the ITF about a year ago, and it was...
I'm not aware of that, but thank you for telling me that.
Or you're aware of this, Bill, I trust.
Well, Nick, I don't know what your problem is, because you did the right thing. You made a decision as a ZBA. You told somebody something was legal or illegal or something. That's the end of that role. But if somebody else in town government then, with discussion with the paid staff, like the zoning people, if they decide there should be a change in the law, in the zoning law, then they can go ahead and make that arrangement to change the law.
Yeah,
It was presented to the intermunicipal task force, and I think at the same time, the task force basically understood that it would be changed by some other process, but there was nothing that the task force was going to write up. We had a very unfortunate example with the fencing law, as you know, for 2 or 3 years before that. We weren't going to get into that again. So this particular case, which is just isolated, was going to be dealt with in a different way, which is, I guess, still in the mix, you know, depending upon the specifics by the zoning enforcement people. But it's just an isolated case, Nick. I mean, nobody has ever taken issue with what the ZBA did. You did everything right.
It's not isolated, Bill. It's a pattern that
There's
we're
no
seeing.
pattern. There's no pattern. You talk about the intermunicipal task force as a pattern because
No.
that subject was presented to us and we pushed it aside.
I'm talking
That's not a pattern.
specifically about our town supervisor.
Well, I hope there's a pattern of taking recommendations from our departments and boards. I hope there is. Because that's something that's part of our role, is to take input. And I think this is a good example. And are you finished with your comments? Because I would like to move on to have other folks, and I will address your question.
Felt that I went.
I didn't want to interrupt you, that's all.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. All right, any other public comments for the public hearing? Okay. Hearing none, I'll keep the public hearing open for the moment. I would certainly like to make some remarks. Our role as the town board is in fact to adopt zoning. Our role is not to approve projects. Our role is not to weigh in on Board of Health issues, whether it's with regard to water or wastewater. And I see the chair of our county water and wastewater authority here in the audience, as a matter of fact. They're individuals that have the expertise to make those decisions. Our role is to continually look at the zoning and to make sure that we've got the best possible zoning to achieve the vision and the goals that are outlined in the town's comprehensive plan. That's our role. So we continue to do that, we continue to make those changes. During the course of that, however, there are projects in front of the various boards. And so our responsibility should always be to be cognizant about the impact that we may have on our residents, and in particular, our residents that have applications in front of our boards at the time. So I take it very seriously, the comments in particular that Norm Gregg made this evening. We've done a lot of work on protecting this community, on preservation, myself and many others in this community, and it's very important to us for so many reasons, and I won't go into that. But we also have to be fair to the applicants that come in front of our particular boards. And so if at the bottom of the ninth inning, for a sports analogy, we go ahead and we change zoning like we did with lodging in our community. We removed lodging from residential districts in part to reflect the sentiment, I think, that some of you have expressed this evening. In doing so, we did not construe at the time that we were going to impact any applications that were in the process and any utility, for lack of a better word, that would be servicing that lodging that is a permitted use, was a permitted use in both the residential districts at the time of application and in what was then known as the B1 district. In addition to that, when we adopted Local Law C of 2018, we did not anticipate that there would be applications that would be impacted. To the extent that we know that there are not, I'm not aware of. We have not gone through, at least I haven't, those 16 applications that the planning board references, many of which I think actually have been completed by now. But I do believe in a sense of fairness to everyone. And so I am moved by the fact that we ask people to go through a very stringent process. And if at the end of the day we make what we feel are better decisions for our community, and those decisions, ask them at the bottom of the ninth inning to go back to the beginning of the game and start again, that I am not comfortable with that. It's a very expensive process in many cases to go in front of our boards, and hopefully we have a better result because of that. You've referenced one particular project in particular this evening. Again, it's not our role in government to approve projects or to express favoritism towards any particular project. The role of approval stands with the planning board. And so what we are looking at this evening is a recommendation from them that basically says, in that role of fairness, that we recommend, which I think is a good practice, by the way, in general, maybe not always, but almost always, that if somebody has received approvals from our boards, that we should not upend their applications at the last minute and make them go through changes, major changes, or maybe even simple changes. So for fairness reasons, I think this is our role as the town board and responsible of us to take this action. So those are my comments, and yes, Nick, I hope you do find that I'm responsible to departments and to boards and their recommendations. Doesn't mean we'll always adopt them, doesn't mean, but I will always forward a recommendation from a board or a department for the town board's consideration, and we like to group those recommendations together. So those are just sort of my comments right now. We do have some materials. Shall we go through the materials? Let's, okay. We did have a referral to the planning board. Obviously, this was a recommendation from the planning board, but the draft of their recommendation is what is considered local law D. And we had to refer that back to them for their comments. They did in fact call a special meeting, somebody referenced that. I think originally they thought since it was their recommendation, they didn't actually have to review it, but yes, they do. Because terminology and wording, of course, are important. So we have that referral, both consistency statements from the planning board, LWRP. We have the EAF, part 1 that we've reviewed. The memo from the planning board is a positive recommendation and a consistency with the LWRP. There's a referral also to county planning that's required. Their response was it's a zoning amendment and that it's a matter of local concern. Have reviewed your full EAF.
I think perhaps you want to look at the draft resolution and walk through that because it refers to the materials and it might be a good way to walk through the materials.
Okay, our secret determination.
Yeah.
It says, well, we have a secret determination of resolution 31 dated May 30th, 2018.
You start with the resolution reaffirming that as a text to go through, and then that refers to these other resources and materials, if you could.
So this would be resolution number 41, I believe it is? 42?
43.
43 we're up to, okay. So this is,
What are you on?
is that 43, reaffirming?
Reaffirming, okay.
It's a resolution reaffirming prior secret determination of non-significance and LWRP consistency determination local law number D proposed in 2019. It's whereas the town board is considering the adoption of local law D proposed in 2019, which seeks to amend 143, 146 of the zoning law regarding projects receiving site plan and special permit approval prior to May 30th, 2018. That's the proposed law. It modifies our zoning chapter, which is 143. Local Law 3 amended the zoning law to, among other things, expressly define drive-in, drive-through, and drive-in window and formula businesses and to prohibit them in all zoning districts in the town. Delete definitions and regulations for fast food restaurants, replace the B1 district in Upper Red Hook with a Hamlet Business District with amended uses, and design standards. I think we've heard a lot about one particular project that is referenced in the change to the B1 district, although this list includes projects in other districts. Amend the use table to permit food trucks in various districts and establishes a new Chapter 9 of the town code. On May 30th, in accordance with the secret regulations, the town board adopted a negative declaration determining that local law 3 would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that a draft environmental impact statement would not be prepared. The planning board has requested the town board amend the law to exempt projects that have received conditional approval prior to the adoption of the law. These are not just all projects in the works, these are projects that had approval from the planning board at the time of adoption. The exemption would maintain the status quo for projects that received the approval, I just said that. Whereas on April 9th, 2019, the town board classified the adoption of the proposed local law as a type 1 action under seeker, and we declared our intent to serve as lead agency. reviewed a full EAF and a coastal assessment form for the proposed action. We've considered the criteria in NYCRR 617.7 and thoroughly analyzed all identified relevant areas of environmental concern disclosed in the FEAF and CAF. And the planning board met just last night, April 23rd, and reaffirmed its consistency finding with the LWRP, taking into account this proposed law. The town board has reviewed the local law with our LWRP and our prior finding of May 30th, and we've reviewed the planning board's finding. There have been no significant changes in circumstances for the surrounding community since the town board adopted its negative declaration for local law 2018. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Red Hook, by a favorable vote of not less than a majority of all the members of the board as follows, we hereby reaffirm our prior secret determination of significance, finding that local law 3 of 2018 as modified would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. And we reaffirm our prior determination regarding consistency with the LWRP, taking into account this law. We authorize and direct the town clerk to distribute a copy of this resolution to all interested agencies, the town supervisor, and any person that has requested a copy, and to make all other findings required by the law. Would anybody like to make that motion for resolution number 43?
So move.
Dated April 24th, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the secret determination?
Local law 3 of 18 is the same as local law
It's a
C.
formula business, right? That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. We also referenced the county referral.
And you do still have your public hearing open? I don't think you closed it?
We do. Okay, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The remaining action to consider with this information is resolution number 44, dated April 24th, 2019. That's authorizing the adoption by the town board of the town of Red Hook of local law D, as I've described it to you, and call it local law number 4 of 2019. And it is regarding amending section 143, 146, regarding projects receiving site plan and special permit approval prior to May 30th, 2018. And it was presented to us on April 9th, 2019. A notice of public hearing was sent out, and the public hearing was held this evening at said time and place. And we have a referral back from County Department of Planning and Development, which responded, I believe, today, maybe yesterday, today. Okay, that it was a matter of local concern. The proposed local law, together with the EAF and CAF, was referred to the planning board and pursuant to 6812 of the code for its recommendations regarding consistency with the local waterfront revitalization plan. And whereas they met yesterday and reviews the local law and recommended approval. Whereas tonight, April 24th, 2019, the town board reaffirmed its prior secret determination, determining that the action would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts, and then a draft environmental impact statement would not be prepared, and reaffirmed its prior determination regarding consistency with the town's LWRP, taking into account the proposed local law. And And so therefore, the town board of the town of Red Hook, after reviewing the comments received and after deliberation, finds it's in the best interest of the town to adopt said local law in the form attached hereto. Now therefore be it resolved by the town board of the town of Red Hook as follows. The town board hereby adopts local law D proposed as local law number 4 of 2019 regarding projects receiving site plan and special permit approval prior to May 30th, 2018. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion?
I have discussion, but
Yes.
anybody else? Surely everybody wants to say something about this momentous occasion.
Sarah?
I'm the only one? All right, so I was on the town board when we adopted local law 3, right? Is that the one, right, from 2018? And I was in the task force when we discussed it for a long time. This is not an easy decision, and part of what it comes down to for me is recognizing that in any community, there's a part, Hub, in your letter that I appreciated, where it talked about how zoning is, part of the use of zoning is to help us live together, to mediate conflict, because whenever people live together, we're always going to have different opinions about how property is handled, how we, how things look, all that, environmental issues, all kinds of things. So that is part of the use of zoning. Part of the issue here for me personally is remembering that this is a pretty rare circumstance. We don't pass zoning lightly, and doing something like this, for me anyway, it involves, considering voting for something like this, it involves really recognizing that that sometimes you don't get it right the first time. I remember in so many discussions that many of us were very clear about not wanting to affect projects that were in the works at the time that would have been receiving approval. And I thought that the planning board said it best in their resolution authorizing the planning board to sign a letter recommending adoption of local law D. They said in their fourth whereas when the planning board recommended approval of local law 3 of 2018, it did not believe it would impact projects that had already received planning board approval. I know I can say that as a town board member at the time as well, that I did not think that those projects would be impacted. And part of what's important about saying that out loud, I think, for those of us who are going to vote for this and who are on the board at the time or on the planning board at the time, is recognizing that that's a mistake. We should have known that the projects would have been impacted. That's something that now has been brought to our attention that is apparently a well-known fact. It means that we need to really think about when we go for training and when we work with our consultants and all the people who help us pass zoning. It's not a one-person decision, it's a team decision, and it actually involves many boards and many people in the town. That fact should have been part of the discussion and should have weighed into our decision-making, and for whatever reason, it didn't. So for myself, and I can only speak for myself, I see this action as trying to bring us back to the original intent, which was not to impact the projects that were up for approval at that time. And so that's why I'd be voting yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion by Bill, a second by Christine, and a roll call. All in favor? Aye.
Did you say roll call?
Yeah, roll call. Christine?
Aye.
Aye. Bill? Aye.
Yes.
Myself, aye.
Aye.
Sarah? Aye. Harry?
No.
Okay. The motion, the resolution passes. Okay. I believe that we have concluded all the business in front of us for this evening?
Are we skipping reorg?
I don't have any reorg this evening. There are some couple of folks who are interested in joining some of our committees, but we haven't received anything in writing from them. And good news, Brenda Cagle looks like she may want to chair our Complete Streets Committee.
Wow.
That includes a lot of important initiatives we're working on now. So, okay, very good. At this time, I would like to, I thought I handled all the correspondence, no?
The bill thing and.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, there was an email from Dylan Tuttle, Dutchess County. There's a notice of funding opportunity called Build. It's better utilizing investments to leverage development. It's a grant. The availability is up to $900 million. It's a federal grant infrastructure grant program. He's forwarding it to all the municipalities to see if there's any infrastructure projects that we might need help with. And so we do have infrastructure in particular.
Would that be the extension of the sewer down south?
Well, that's a good question. So it's something we want to
If we
explore.
could use that, then we could use the money in that other proposal, right, Harry?
Yes.
Use that for your extension.
Yeah, I mean, we should do anything we can to.
If we get both, we can apply to both.
I think this is for surface transportation, but
Yeah.
you can look at it.
Infrastructure is just surface?
Surface
Surface
transportation.
Oh,
transportation.
but you said infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yes, roads,
Affordable
bridges,
transportation
transit.
for communities in rural areas. So maybe it dovetails with our vans that we're getting.
Intermodal transportation, might be some trails things on there.
But it does say that build funding can support roads, bridges, transit. So maybe we'll take a look at it for roads as well. Be nice if it could help us with that culvert we have. Okay, is there anything else we didn't mention in correspondence?
This other email?
The dumping with four-wheelers.
Oh, yes, thank you. Bill Moore, the other Bill Moore, we already had one here tonight, Commander Bill Moore. The other Bill Moore who is a resident who adjoins the town-owned property on 199 where we used to take some of our road materials from that property. He has advised us that people have been riding quads on that property, and he would ask us to consider posting the land because of liability issues. Obviously, he lives adjacent to it, so I'm sure he doesn't enjoy having the quads running up and down next to him, but that's really not our issue. Our issue is, do we want people with that activity going on that property? For folks who are not familiar, this is where the highway department used to bring its road waste when we'd sweep or debris.
It's a town-owned property.
It's a town-owned property.
But does Teresa say we've been doing it recently? I don't think so.
Well, it's still
It's not about us.
So it's town-owned property. The issue is whether we should post
property, and
it.
should we allow quads on it or post it?
I just don't know.
Well,
if we
it's
wanna-
used for some things that make it dangerous.
You have a four-wheeler in your driveway, don't you, sir?
No, my grandson does, and I made him remove it from my property.
Okay. Folks, that's all we have for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we close the meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.